Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely dismantle a concept that you probably practice every single day. You see, most of us just go through life assuming that being nice and being kind are the exact same thing, right? We literally use the words interchangeably. But what if I told you they're actually fundamentally different? In fact, what if I told you that simply being nice might actually be destroying your relationships, stalling your career, and completely burning you out? Today, we're unpacking the deep psychological and ethical differences between niceness and kindness, and we're setting the stage for a major paradigm shift in how you interact with the world.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to answer this honestly for yourself right now. When you agree to do a favor for a friend, even when you're already exhausted, or when you just smile and nod at a terrible idea in a meeting, are you being kind or are you just being nice? Genuine kindness is driven by true empathy and a deep desire to support someone's long-term well-being. Niceness, on the other hand, it's very often just driven by a fear of conflict. It's about preserving immediate comfort and making sure people like you. It's a subtle but honestly massive difference in motivation.
Think of this like two completely different operating systems. Niceness is what psychologists call a personality ethic. It's a superficial left brain process focused on logic, social rules, and really securing external validation. It's performative. Kindness, though, is rooted in the character ethic. It's an emotional, right brain process rooted in deep values and active benevolence. You don't perform kindness to look good. You do it because it's the right thing to do, even when no one is watching, and, crucially, even when it's uncomfortable. Now, when that superficial need to be nice goes into overdrive, we enter clinical territory. This is where we find pathological altruism, which you probably know better as people-pleasing. And let's be clear, this isn't just about being overly polite. It's an anxious survival mechanism. Developmentally, this often originates way back in childhood. If you grew up in a highly demanding or unpredictable environment, you might have learned that your emotional safety depended on hypervigilantly scanning the room and adapting your behavior to appease everyone else. Compulsive accommodating isn't a virtue, it is literally a fear-driven defense mechanism. And that cuts right to the absolute core of personal agency. Think about it. If you cannot say no, your yes means absolutely nothing. A huge indicator of people-pleasing is what clinicians call the insides-outsides mismatch. That's when you're smiling, agreeable, and saying yes on the outside, but on the inside, you are drowning in anxiety, overwhelm, and resentment. Authentic kindness actually aligns your internal motivation with your external actions. If you're being forced into a yes by your own anxiety, that's an obligation, not an act of kindness. So how do we get trapped in this cycle? Well, clinical psychologist Harriet Braiker breaks it down brilliantly with her disease-to-please triangle. It shows how all these behaviors just lock together. It starts with mindsets, that irrational belief that your self-worth depends entirely on everyone's approval. That mindset creates feelings, specifically a debilitating, intense fear of negative emotions or anger from other people. And that fear directly triggers habits, compulsive overgiving, and the absolute inability to say no. Your emotional radar gets so tuned to other people that you're preemptively accommodating them before they even open their mouths to ask. Do you recognize any of these toxic shoulds in yourself? They're basically the commandments of people-pleasing. I should always put others first. I should never say no. I should never display negative emotions. And the ultimate trap, I must do all of this perfectly. Let me tell you, living by these rigid rules is a fast track to chronic burnout and completely losing your personal identity. And you know what the ironic twist is? Because this behavior is driven by a desperate need for safety and validation, it often feels suffocating or just totally inauthentic to others, actively repelling the genuine connection the people pleaser is trying so hard to find. So let's shift gears and look at part one. The professional cost, otherwise known as ruinous empathy. This dynamic doesn't just ruin our personal lives. It causes massive, massive damage in the workplace. In organizational dynamics, nice cultures actually breed mediocrity. Imagine an employee gives a totally disorganized, terrible presentation. A nice manager, who is terrified of tension, will just say, "Hey, great effort," to avoid making things awkward. That is ruinous empathy. Sure, it preserves immediate comfort, but it completely stalls that employee's professional growth. A kind manager, on the other hand, practices radical candor. They pull the employee aside privately and deliver specific, honest, corrective feedback. Delivering difficult truths is highly uncomfortable. It is definitely not nice in the pleasing sense, but it is deeply, profoundly kind. And let's see how this builds into a huge systemic issue. Societal expectations place a disproportionate pressure on women to be nice and agreeable. And the data from our source shows this has a very tangible professional cost. Managers are significantly more likely to prioritize politeness over direct critique when evaluating female employees. To put that into perspective, because managers are actively avoiding challenging, constructive feedback just to remain nice, women are frequently being shut out of the crucial developmental feedback loops required to actually advance to executive leadership positions. Niceness, in this context, literally creates structural inequity. Which brings us to part 2, the boundary catalyst. Moving from fear-based people-pleasing to principled kindness requires a massive psychological shift, because setting boundaries is going to trigger intense internal guilt. You will literally feel like you are being selfish. You have to overcome this using cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, reframes. You take a maladaptive belief, like, if I say no, they're going to abandon me forever, and literally restructure it with reality-tested principles. You replace it with, feelings are not facts, healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, and they can absolutely survive honest disagreements. You have to mentally dismantle those catastrophic predictions before you can ever hope to change your behavior. All right, let's get into the solutions. Part 3, actionable, assertive kindness. Now that we've tackled the mindset, let's look at some concrete, clinical tools. I'm going to give you specific frameworks from the source material to help you build resilience and establish strict, healthy boundaries. So the crucial point here is understanding the core boundary setting process. It's just 3 steps. First, identify the limit and the specific behavioral change you'll make if it's crossed. Second, communicate it clearly and warmly. But step 3 is where the magic happens and where true kindness actually lives, minding the boundary. You absolutely must execute your predetermined behavioral change immediately if the boundary is violated with zero hesitation. You can't control others, guys. You can only control what you will do. And to help communicate these boundaries effectively under pressure, clinical psychology gives us dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT protocols. These are incredible tools. Dear Man helps you make objective requests and say a firm no. Give focuses on relationship effectiveness, keeping your tone gentle and validating the other person so the connection stays warm. And Fast is all about self-respect, being fair, sticking to your values, and crucially, never apologizing for having a limit. Let's ground this theory in a real-world scenario. Let's call it the after-hours boss. The nice people pleaser gets a Slack message at 10 p.m., instantly goes into a state of panic, and anxiously replies right away, effectively teaching the boss that their personal time has absolutely zero value. The kind response? You explicitly clarify your working hours during the day, stating you'll review evening messages the following morning. And when that 10 p.m. message comes, you gracefully but firmly manage it by holding the line. You leave that notification unread until the next business day. That, right there, is assertive kindness in action. And when it comes to giving feedback, we really need to abandon those empty platitudes and use the situation behavior impact, or SBI model. Situation: during yesterday's meeting. Behavior: you interrupted several times. Impact: which made it difficult for the team to share ideas. This takes that passive, nice habit of just saying, oh, everything's fine, and substitutes it with an active, kind tool that actually gives your colleague the precise, actionable information they need to grow and succeed. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. You're saying, when I try to do this, my heart races, my hands literally start shaking. And that's fair. That is a very real autonomic nervous system response. But here is a cool biological trick to manage it: the 2-by rule. When you are setting a boundary, deliberately make your exhalations twice as long as your inhalations. This physically stimulates your vagus nerve. It rapidly downregulates your fight or flight response, lowers your heart rate, and keeps your logical prefrontal cortex online so your emotional brain doesn't completely hijack the conversation. And hey, what if you still shake or even cry? Listen to me, you do not have to hide it. Instead of masking your physiological distress, try something called transparent emotional integration. Explicitly weave your physical response right into your communication. You can literally say out loud, you can probably see that I am shaking because I care deeply about our relationship, but it is essential for me to communicate this boundary. By naming it, you strip away the shame and transform your vulnerability into a deeply powerful, disarming tool for authentic connection. We've covered so much ground today, moving all the way from the anxious compliance of people-pleasing to the real ethical strength of true kindness. Choosing kindness over niceness is an investment in your authenticity and your long-term relationships. So I'll leave you with this final thought to carry with you today as you look for an opportunity to enforce your very first boundary. Will you continue to choose the pleasing, superficial comfort of being nice, or are you ready to embrace the principled, sometimes uncomfortable courage of being truly kind?